Buonasera a tutti e benvenuti al Collegio Irlandese. Chied mille fáilte to one and all to the Pontifical Irish College. So on behalf of myself, Father Emmanuel, the staff and the students of the college, we extend a warm welcome to you, even though we don't want it much warmer than it is for the evening. So we've opened the door just to vent the room to make it comfortable for you. So just to welcome you and to welcome you to an institution that dates back almost 400 years. In 2028, we'll celebrate the 400th anniversary of the foundation of the Irish College as an institution. And in 2 years' time, we'll celebrate the 100th anniversary of the college here on the Chéilian Hill. Today, the college is made up of 3 distinct communities: a community of postgraduate priests that come from 19 different nations, and Asia is well represented among those, a community of seminarians that come from largely the United States and one from Italy, and then a new program of lay students from Ireland and the United States who are part of a Catholic Studies program and engaged in formation here at the college with us. So on behalf of that entire community, to welcome you. And if I may be so bold to pick out 2 words in the poster advertising today's event. The second word was to blossom. In coming to Rome, somebody gave me wise advice because I hadn't been a student here and it was a very different landscape than I was used to. And they said to me, blossom where you're planted. Blossom where you're planted. We're planted in this generation. And Pope St. John Paul said that every new generation is like a new continent to be won for Christ. Those words ring true today as they did 27. And there's a sense in which this generation needs to blossom in this time. And I draw your attention to our easel here and to the photo, which was taken at the conclusion of the council. And it's all the Irish delegates and residents in Rome at that time. So it's obviously in black and white. If it were to be taken today, it would be in colour. A lot has happened in the intervening time. And there is a sense among some of the younger generation of a looking back with a certain sense of nostalgia too. So my role here is about encouraging them to blossom in this generation where they are. So tonight, we're looking forward to the students having the opportunity, as well as your guests, of listening to the story of how those seeds of Vatican II have been blossoming in the Asian landscape. And as a child of the 70s, I grew up with 80s music. And one of the bands from my youth was a band called Tears for Fears. And they had a song called Sowing the Seeds of Love. So hopefully, in part of what we will hear tonight, we will hear how the seeds of love have not only been sown, but how they have matured and grown. So welcome once again to the Irish College, and thank you for being here.
If you don't mind, we're going to do like we do at the Synod. So starting with a small, short prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We thank you, Lord. You have gathered us tonight to open our views, our horizons, and to be a little bit in the stream of the Synod. You have gathered in Rome with bishops, lay people, priests from all over the world. Let us listen to one another, knowing that your presence as risen Christ among us is the light for the church and for the world, now and forever. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear friends, as you have noticed, I'm not used to praying in English. And I'm a moderator, a facilitator in an English-speaking group. So that's the experience of the Synod also. I want to express my gratitude to Father Paul Finati, the rector of the Irish College, for organizing and let us organize this event in partnership. Many thanks also to Father Emmanuel Obi, who he's the vice rector. He did a lot while I was busy at the Synod to organize things with my assistant, personal assistant. Thank you very much. And of course, Father Felix Wilfred, it's an honor for us to have you with us, not only because you are an expert theologian at the Synod, but because for time you're a very well-known theologian in the world. I had the pleasure to visit Felix Wilfred in Chennai, where he founded the Center for Christian Studies in the Public University of Chennai. That's really a lifelong development, and that is really noticeable. He has been also for a decade the director of the Great Review Concilium. I've forgotten, but I have here his last book, For a Socially Engaged Faith. So the topic tonight is really this: how did the event of the Second Vatican Council allow the Christian theology to blossom not only in India but in Asia? Felix Wilfred, Professor Wilfred, is an expert of Indian theology, but he's also, if you have a look at this book, you can have it circulate among you. I want to get it back because there is a dedication. So you'll see it's a collection of articles on very different topics, but you'll see how the knowledge, not only of Asian cultures, but of Western cultures, allows Professor Wilfred to have a critical approach of the Western, but also some Asian practices or cultures in the light of the gospel. And that is really the whole idea. I want to say a word to my colleagues, whom I have not seen for 2 weeks now, to the students. I hope that, and I'm so happy to have so many sisters from India mainly, priests from India, but also from Africa, because this is not about Asian theology. It's about listening to the way theology is made in a different culture. And this is really what we have to discover when we study in Rome or we teach in Rome. Teaching in Rome is really an occasion of learning every day, because we meet people from the one Catholic and diverse church. And we also hear from different contexts. And this requires from us a very different way of studying theology. That's the topic. I give the floor to Professor Pier Davide Guenzi, who is our Director for Research and who prepared the topic of this year. Professor Wilfred will inaugurate tonight. Thank you very much. Welcome to all. Special thanks to the Pontifical Irish College and its director for their kind hospitality. Special welcome to Professor Felix Wilfred, who accepted our invitation to give this lecture despite his great commitment to the Synod of Bishops. This evening's appointment, in partnership with the Pontifical Irish College, is an opportunity for the academic community of the John Paul Institute to begin a seminar for professors and doctoral students. The increasing presence of male and female students from Asian countries who bring with them a rich store of cultural and religious traditions has made us reflect on the importance of learning more about the lively debate and theological research in the context of some countries of the vast and complex Asian continent. For this reason, our seminar is entitled Asian Theologies: Perspective in Context and Implication for the Research of our Institute. The aim is not only to increase knowledge, but to gain concrete experience of contextual theologies developed in some Asian countries. The seminar will offer some examples attentive to the social culture and ecclesial realities of the Asian continent. In the choice of topics, priority will be given to the aspects of greatest interest for the research in our institute, such as family, marriage, kinship structures, immigration, interreligious dialogue, the connection between theology and pastoral practices. This evening we asked Professor Felix Wilfred to give us an overview of the development of theological research in Asia in recent years. This research is now wide-ranging and ramified, but is grafted onto the renewal that matured during the years of the Second Vatican Council. For the academic community of the John Paul II Institute, the seminar is a particularly significant opportunity to develop a shared theological research, but also to enhance the skills and sensitivities of our doctoral students from Asia and other countries. The seminar is also an opportunity to learn to develop the full potential of a contextual and practical theological perspective, especially dedicated to the theme of family. We are confident that this evening Professor Felix Wilfred will introduce us to this work and offer us elements to develop during the seminar proceedings. For this, I thank him and give him the floor for his lecture.
Good evening to one and all. It's indeed a great pleasure and honor to speak here at a program jointly organized by the John Paul II Institute and the Irish College. And I owe great gratitude to Professor Philip Fordayan and the Director of Studies, Professor Pierre David Quincy, and the Rector of the Irish College, Father Paul Finnerty. I am grateful that so many of you have come, and faculty and students, and I look forward to more interesting discussion than my input. I would try to be as brief as possible, then we can have a conversation. It was the year 1965, September 21st,
most of you are not born, that I landed in Rome as a teenager, 17-year-old, for my studies at Collegio Urbano and the Vatican Hills. From where I could see Pontifical masses from the taking place in San Pietro, even almost from my room. Amidst the confusion of the language, food, and climate, there was another confusion of bishops roaming around, 2,000 bishops in Rome. And it was September, and December 8th was the closing of the council. I didn't understand anything of what was going on, but it was a spectacle for me. So I came down from the Collegio to see what was happening. I have a photo of that. I was standing in St. Peter's Square and watching the 2,000 bishops going, with a mitre or a big spectacle. The only one thing I understood was the message Pope Paul VI gave to humanity. And the message was given to Jacques Maritain, a French philosopher. I could make only sense of it because we are having classes on Jacques Maritain, philosophy classes. Nothing else I understood. But it's a great pleasure and joy to have witnessed the closing of the council. In retrospect, it makes a lot of difference. That's what I would like to start with this personal reference. Now, after the council, you see, that was a time when theology was at its height after the Enlightenment period, probably, so much. The Concilium Journal had, 20, 30, 40,000 subscribers. It is a flowering period for theology in modern times. And theologians of Rana, Konga, these people were everywhere, to explain and tell people what the council is all about. And many of you may know that Rana, after the council, wrote a very significant article which is often cited, The Permanent Significance of Vatican II. So after all, looking everything, Rana wanted to give us in a sentence what the council was. What is new in this council? With all due respect to Rana, who was my teacher because I attended his Christology classes, which he gave us in Latin, imagine. I was struggling for words. I must say, he said that the permanent significance, the enduring significance of Vatican II is for the first time in history, the church became truly universal. But I have serious difficulty about this assessment of the council because I find this typically Eurocentric, unintended, but deep down. That is to say, to imagine that Europe and America is a Christianity and it expands to Africa, Asia, etc. Historically, this is questionable because Christianity was in our parts of Asia much before in Europe. There was a church of East Asia. In India, there is the tradition of St. Thomas, if not for first century, at least third century. In China, 6th, 7th century already, the Nestorian Christianity was there. Iran, everywhere, Christianity was there. Therefore, this is to ignore the history. North Africa, you have St. Augustine, etc., etc. It's to ignore that Christianity proceeded in many parts of, proceeded in other parts of Asia than coming to Europe. I don't need to go into that history. Second point, which I would like to underline, looking from Asia, to look at significance of the council that it becomes universal is doesn't, how do we call, excite you. What we find, looking through the Asian lenses, the most significant is the salvation of God as universality. That the revelation and salvation of God has all the people. There's no exclusion. This is something beautiful which you find in the Lumen Gentium and the Divine Revelation. All those things speak about. the restricted extra ecclesia nulla salus, basically the long shadow of this axiom, which is operating even still now among some people. It was overcome. The grace of God and salvation of God is all the people. From Asponga wrote, just from Abel, everybody belongs to the kingdom of God. This is something most significant looking from Asia of Vatican II. I think this first one to understand. Therefore, the significance is not ecclesiological, but theological significance of Vatican II, which I want to underline. Vatican and the interpretation of tradition. Let me say a few things on that. How it is. You know that the Vatican II has been object of heated debates in Western theology. And especially, you may remember 1985, the Pope had to convoke a special synod on the significance of Vatican II. And the question of the debate was this: what occasioned was this, whether Vatican II is in continuity with the tradition of the church, or there is a rupture. There is something new which was not there. So, big debate was going on between these two schools. Some would say, well, Vatican II reaffirmed trend and Vatican I, etc., etc. So there's nothing extraordinary. It's in keeping with the tradition of the church. As I say, there's something new which Vatican II brought. But we take a distance from such discussions, which, as I said, does not excite us. Because this is basically a particular understanding of text and interpretation. So you think that there's a text and that should be interpreted. And how do you interpret? That you go and find out what was in the mind of the author. The biblical scholars will know very easily, how is it, the meaning of the author. So you do the exegesis, you do all that. Similar to the biblical exegesis, the texts of Vatican II were submitted to scrutiny of philological and lexicographic and all kinds of examination. In the end, it's a light dissection of a dead body. The spirit was gone. So you're caught up in a discussion of dissecting what supposed to be the meaning of Vatican II and what are its teachings, etc., going into every document. Asia sees Vatican II through the lens of their lived experiences in a multicultural and multi-religious Asia. In practice, they have adopted hermeneutics of distanciation. For Asians, Vatican II is an open-ended text meant to be interpreted in the light of the contemporary issues and challenges they face. It's a non-document whose meaning is strictly tied to the intentions of the Council Fathers, nor should it be deciphered solely through detailed historical exegesis. This is, I think, very important because, to go a little bit philosophically, there is a textual fundamentalism. If you analyze this, a textual fundamentalism. Text is something fixed, and therefore you have interpretation. But we have in Asia a tradition of interpretation, Bhashya, we call it in India, Bhashya. A text is interpreted through the means of different texts to such an extent that the Indian epic Ramayana, which is like Iliad or this epic, we have not only interpretations of the epics, but new texts. Every new context created the need for rewrite the same story in a different form. So it's not a question of a fixation of textual fixation, and then you try to see what is the meaning, etc., etc. Every context creates it. Therefore, Asia wants to create its Vatican II text. through its experiences. That's what's happened in the process today. And let me add here, I can't go too much into the hermeneutics, but only one. This is very much keeping with the Asian hermeneutical tradition, which you have from the 9th century, Anandavardhana, aesthetics, this we call literary hermeneutics and aesthetics. Anandavardhana was the master. And we have 11th century, another Abhinavagupta. These two are very, very significant figures. I don't go into their, what we call, philosophy of interpretation. But one thing, for practical, which will strike, which I want to say. Anandavardhana says that interpreting something, of course, we don't need to think only about text, but also a picture, a performance. Everything is an object of interpretation, isn't it? A historical event. A text is something like a woman, and he says that because the father has generated the daughter, he need not be the best interpreter of her beauty. It can be her husband, her lover, her friend. So the creator of the text is not necessarily the best interpreter. Therefore, here, Vatican was created a text. Asia is finding probably the beauty of this text by, through its own, experiences, etc., etc. The contemporary Asian Christian thinkers recognize that the council could not possibly provide all the answers to the challenges. But if we continuously interpret, see it as a text which is in evolution, not fixated, then it's considered as a seed. I deliberately use the word seed. It's not a planting of Vatican II in Asia and Africa. It's a seed which grows the landscape because the soil has a lot to do in understanding the seed. So Vatican is more a seed rather than a planted tree. The potential within the seed, when blended with the local soil, produced a tree that bore unique fruits that could only emerge organically from this context. Council's openness to all humanity and its recognition of the role of religions in the divine providence, long evident in the various forms throughout Asia, found affirmation, support, and renewed vigor in Vatican II's teaching, especially through Nostra Aetate and Gaudium et Spes. What I'm trying to say is that this did not come as a total novelty because already in Asia, the thinking was in this line. Therefore, when Vatican II said, we said, yes, that's right. More than, oh, yes, it's something totally new. Already I will explain how that happened. Moreover, post-conciliar developments in the understanding of religious pluralism explicitly addressed in the three primary concerns of the Asian churches are formulated by the Federation of Asian Bishops' Conferences, dialogue with the religions, with cultures, and solidarity with the poor. The thesis on interreligious dialogue, crafted by the FABC's Theological Advisory Commission, stands as a landmark in this. I have the book where you have the talk, maybe later I can show you. Where these documents are available, Theological Advisory Commission of FABC. FABC is something like Ceylon, that, something similar. It's a continental body. Asian theologians recognize that many of their insights, once marginalized, have now found new life in the thinking of the universal church. I'm speaking about the post-conciliar period. This includes the idea of the Spirit's universal presence, not only in individuals, but also within the religious cultures of various peoples. We have Redemptoris Missio number 28. But all these ideas were generated. But we don't expect that the Pope quoting from the sources there, but these ideas were very much there. Events such as the interreligious prayer at Assisi and Pope Francis visit the Buddhist temples and Islamic mosques affirm the Asian approach to religion. Welcome approach. This approach emphasizes the practice of fostering friendship and fraternity over the more theoretical quest for common ground rarely yields significant fruits. Because I have found that, barring exceptions, most of this Western approach to intelligence dialogue is to find a common ground. It's common ground. That does not bring much results. It's very interesting. But what brings results is fraternity, friendship. Friendship brings fruits that my neighboring religions, neighboring people, and that brings total change in the mindset that the conflicts can be resolved many times through friendship and exchange. Not that whether what you say and I say we believe in the same thing. This is an approach that does not work. We should also look at the legacy of Vatican II in context in Asia from what the Germans call Wirkungsgeschichte, from the effective history. What did it produce? Let us look at from this aspect. The reception of Vatican II was facilitated by its alignment with the aspirations of many Asian churches. Numerous innovations proposed by the Council echoed, in fact, the expectations articulated by Asian bishops and bishops' conferences in their OTA during the preparatory phase. Before the Council, the OTA. They were asked to say what they expect, which was subsequently sent to Rome. In a significant study on the involvement of Indian bishops at Vatican II, one of the doctoral students, Paul Pulican, has highlighted, he has research on that, several reform-oriented proposals from these bishops. Please remember that these bishops were trained in Western theology. It was before the council. Most of them did not understand what was taking place in Vatican II. They came. I had my bishop, was a very, very pious Jesuit, 30, 40 years. He told me he never missed a session, but never opened his mouth. So they were not familiar with the whole discussion of what Rana was telling all these people, telling about, primacy, nothing. They were practical people, pastorally oriented, but they had a sense of where the church should be. Therefore, even before the council started, they said, these are the things which you would like pastorally to change the church. Let me read from this thesis a passage where he says, key proposals from the Indian author included, for example, these were the things the bishops asked before the council. The use of vernacular languages, liturgical renewal, the re-establishment of the permanent diaconate is still finding so much, including married deacons, ecumenical dialogue with non-Catholic churches, the reform of the Roman Curia, and adaptation and inculturation of Christianity in India. Almost the whole agenda of Vatican II. Intuitively, not as a result of a theological speculation, they send these things to Vatican. These are the things we would like that the council engages with. Similar sentiments were reflected in Vota from other parts of Asia. Thus, the reception of Vatican II was met with the enthusiasm across the continent as it resonated with the pastoral goals of Asian churches, now articulated in this. Although bishops initially struggled to provide a solid theological foundation for these intuitively felt needs, this gap was skillfully addressed by Asian theologians in post-conciliar period. So the Asian theologians in the post-conciliar period supported what the bishops pastorally and intuitively felt. These theologians contributed significantly to the development of indigenous theological perspectives. During the council, a theological conference was held in Mumbai during the council, 1964, when Paul VI visited India. 13th International Eucharistic Congress, where Indian theologians openly discussed the salvation of people from other religious traditions and the importance of dialogue with them. The active engagement underscores the reception of Vatican II by Asian Christians was far from passive. It was marked by a proactive and influential participation. Let me come to the continued legacy of Vatican II, the three dialogues of which I referred to, the Federation of Asian Bishops Conference, meeting 1970. It was founded in 71, along with the visit of Pope Paul VI to Philippines. That was the time, because the continental bodies were created. 74, for the first time, for the General Assembly, the bishops met in Taiwan. It is there they programmatically said Asia must enter into dialogue with cultures, religions, and the poor. The majority of the poor of the world still live in Asia. The Council's innovative understanding of culture, distinct from evolutionary views, and the directive of Nostra Aetate provided foundational ideas for developing dialogue with both cultures and religions. Let me comment on this. This is very important. I think Gaudium Spes made a very, very significant contribution by challenging the evolutionary perspective of culture. This evolutionary perspective said that some people are, still in the primitive stage. So, the Hegelian scheme of evolution of history, slowly, with absolute spirit, appearing, culminating, of course. So this whole evolutionary understanding created the racism, discrimination, oppression, and legitimation of exploitation and plunder. It did not address directly the problem of colonialism, but gave a different approach to culture. It's not to be seen in an evolutionary perspective that some people are cultured, others. All peoples have cultures. Universal gift of God. Culture is a pattern of behavior, institutionalized, through which you see the world, like language. Language is not a means. As Heidegger rightly said, die Sprache spricht. You don't simply speak the language. Language speaks. It's not a medium of communication. We think in language. Therefore, we act, our perceptions are conditioned by our desire, our cultures. So that's very important. I think that's one of the important. So I have repeatedly said in many meetings, the real missionary document of Vatican II was not Argentus, because that discussed the European discussion whether the object of mission is whether plantatio ecclesia, planting or preaching. This was a big question, it's a logical question. So you find, of course, the Trinitarian basis, everything is there, agendas, but basically it didn't push you any further. Gaudium et Spes is for us the real mission document. It is yet to be. There's no Vatican II without Gaudium et Spes, which has a permanent significance continuously. The church to the world, which had a Caesarean birth in Vatican II because many theologians, including bishops, objected because there is no theological content. That happened to be, perhaps one of the most significant. So there, the first, that human dignity, the three important things in Gaudium et Spes: human dignity, sociality of human beings. Human beings are not alone, together. God saves them together. And the historicity, the agency of the human beings. These three are very firmly asserted. Therefore, these new perspectives are, a universalistic approach, taking a distance from, and we must thank also the anthropologists who contributed the Vatican II's understanding of culture in this deeper form. Inspired by Vatican II, Asian churches have actively engaged in dialogue with the poor, reflecting the continent's reality at home to the vast, largest population impoverished people. I would like to quote one of the great Asian theologians, Sri Lankan, Aloysius Kiris, who said, it's the second time in the whole history of the church that a council speaks about the poor. The first time was the Jerusalem Council, second was Vatican II. And if you see Michel Mola, the book I like, Les Pauvres au Moyen Âge, the poor in the Middle Age, beautifully brings out how the Middle Age Vicarius Christi, the poor were called Vicarius Christi. Vicar of Christ were the poor. Of course, today we apply it to the whole theology of ordination, etc., etc. So we have this use. So the second time we have in the whole history, it speaks about the poor. Then we must thank also our Latin American and Central American brothers who have expanded it to bring the whole idea of liberation, especially of the poor, though it was not so explicitly articulated in Vatican. Inspired by Vatican II, Asian churches are actively engaged in dialogue with the poor, reflecting the continent's reality at home and the world's largest population, impoverished people. Asia's poor, as Bishop Theodore Bakani, let me quote Bakani was actually Bishop of Manila, whom I had known very well, very, very active, engaged. He said the significance of what that means, dialogue with the poor. Let me quote: the Church of the Poor is the Philippines' way of receiving and inculcating one of the most potent and undeveloped seeds sown by Vatican II. The Council spirit was sufficient to inspire new approaches to evangelization in Medellin and Puebla. It has also led the church in the Philippines towards renewed understanding what it meant to be church. Let me come to the next point. Asians sing their own tunes, unfazed. Asian Christians found in the council returned to the pluralism of early Christian traditions, resonated with their own cultural ethos, whether in worship, theological development, scripture interpretation, or shaping local community life. Asian Christianity embraces ways to express their identity without conforming to a single pattern. The shift from a centralizing universality towards a pluralism seen in Pentecost marked a significant change. This deep engagement with Vatican II led Asian churches to express concern about certain Roman positions they felt were contrary to the council spirit. There was whole conflict happened. The understanding of mission, as they would say that some of the documents, Roman documents, were because they were afraid that Asian theology of religion is going too far and too dangerous. I witnessed in the assembly in Bandung in Indonesia, General Assembly, which I had the privilege to give the keynote address to the bishops of Asia, where the Rome was so alarmed that all the nuncios were there, and it was a big issue. So this is to say that while Rome emphasized explicit preaching, baptism, and conversion, Asian bishops and Christians advocated for a mission characterized by silent witness. Instead of focusing on Jesus Christ as exclusive Savior, is contrary, because it does not work. It does not work. Because anything you do like that, it's interpreted as a continuation of colonialism, that conversion. So in most countries I know, starting Indonesia, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, everywhere, the Christian is equated with conversion. Therefore, repeating, go preach and convert is absolutely doesn't resonate with actual conditions, where it's more a silent witness, or as the French say, proposer le foi, much more than it is a preaching or something like that. So this approach, therefore, there was a conflict, a period of conflict. Asian churches, 2-3 counts. One was, say, the understanding of the church and the kingdom of God. The mission Asian theologians emphasize that church cannot be understood without relation to the kingdom of God. Don't absolute the church. Church is in relation to the kingdom which is to come. And also that you need to follow a certain pedagogy in proposing Jesus to others. Let me quote this. So, because they wanted immediately, you must say fast, so afraid that Jesus is forgotten, that Jesus is the Savior of the world and He is the one who did all that. I'm reminded about priests parish priest wrote on the top of the church, Jesus is the answer. The next day, some mischievous boys are written, but what is the question? So we always want to give the answer to the world, but what's the question? Asia asks, what is the question? Then tries to respond. That's how a pedagogical necessary means. Now, for the Synod of Asia, because before the 2000 there was Synod of Asia, Continental Synod, the Asian bishops were sent a lineamenta to which some of the Asian bishops, most strongly the Japanese bishops, could not understand because it was again drum, preach, and the sound was so strange, but they were very polite. They wrote to Vatican in their report, the lineamenta. This is a quote. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. No problem. But in Asia, before emphasizing that Jesus Christ is the truth, we must delve more deeply into how He is the way and the life. Take the path as you go. So they felt that this could not, because they wrote a very strong, and I know that Vatican was angry. Cardinal Hamad was there at that time, because then they said some missionary must have instigated. Then Cardinal Hamad was so furious. You think we Japanese are so foolish that we cannot make statement on our own? Anyway, this is part of that. The theology religious inspired by the council called for corresponding new theology of mission. However, a disconnect emerged between these two aspects of the post-conciliar period. Asian Christians have developed a mission approach consistent with the council's theology of religions, while Roman directives have repeatedly proven impractical in the Asian context. For example, Asian theologians have resisted using dialogue merely as a tool for mission. No, it's an end in itself. Arguing that dialogue itself is as intrinsic value and cannot simply be instrumentalized. Let me quote from a statement of a joint Protestant and Catholic meeting, 1987. I had also privilege to participate, in this meeting. WCC, World Council of Churches, is CCA called, the Asian, and the FABC together. The whole issue of dialogue and mission connection said dialogue and mission have their own integrity and freedom. They are distinct but not unrelated. Dialogue is not a tool or instrument for mission and evangelization, but influences how the church perceives and practices mission in a pluralistic world. Mission invites us to participate in God's ongoing activity through the Spirit to heal creation, overcome fragmentation, and mend the rift between nature, humanity, and God. We gave priority of the time. Let me come towards the end. Professor Philip also told me something to bring about the Asian method of theology. I will do that now at the very end of it. Say, advancing the council legacy, challenges ahead. Just before conclusion, I want to reflect it. First, relationship between church and the state in Asia is fraught with tension and complexity. This is one of the major things we face. The communism is alive in Asia, in China, in Korea, in Vietnam, other places. Here they celebrate. Francis Fukuyama wrote the book, The End of History, The New Man, as if communism, socialism overcome. It's very strong. China, more than 1 billion people are at least ideologically supposed to espouse, socialism and communism. Not Korea, that. So every country, including the Philippines, where majority of Christians, have conflict with the state, conflict interests, not that they are entering into. So this is a problem which we have to face as a minority who do not have much historical examples how to go about. Therefore, we need to find our own way of whether are we going along with the states who we have Vatican-China relationship. Of course, is one of the things Pope made a great risk, to enter into, because that without that, no possibility for the Christians to do their go for mass, etc., etc. But some may say this was a selling out. Cardinal Zeng of Hong Kong was furious with this accord of Vatican with China. So this whole problematic, how do you go about the states? Some of them are rogue states, authoritarian states, and some of them communists. And imagine Vietnam, at least I know some years ago, to enter the seminary or religious house, you have to get state permission. And for a bishop to go to a pastoral visit to a parish, you must get permission from the authorities. Can you imagine the conditions? So that's a big story. I don't go into it. So the political realities needs to be addressed. It's one of the things they are facing in the post-conciliar period, which you need to creatively respond. You don't have much examples to go by. Secondly, against this context, a project of inculturation which wants to send the message that Christians are locally rooted often does not help. Inculturation is not the answer. People, Hindus don't want inculturation. They say, do your way. If you are a Muslim, do your way. We are for plurality. We don't want you. That doesn't excite us. That you are with the people and with their issues. That is the question. You may wear your cassock or whatever, no problem, because they have thousands of ways of doing this. So that's not a problem. Whether you are addressing what concerns the people, that's the question, which is not so much inculturation doesn't help. What seems to be most important in the present juncture is Christian faithful and the church as a body, issues affecting the people, nation, and so doing show themselves really rooted. As for Vatican II vision and knowledge of its teaching are important not only for the Christian faithful. Let's just see, this is what I want to point out. I was teaching in a state university, as a professor told. So one day there was a meeting of, say that each religious tradition wants to say what developments in their religion has taken place. So I also was part of this whole exercise. So everybody said. And when I spoke to them about Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican II, and this understanding, they were aghast. Did all these things happen? They are all well informed. The total failure of making known the Vatican II to peoples of other religions. That the church has renewed itself. It is no more, because I remember in Kanyakumari, there is how some of the ideas, of course, it was a little bit nationalistic thing. There is a Kendra, like an ashram into radicalists. They have a picture drawn, the missionary period, where the missionary has got in one hand the Bible, other hand a whiskey. So this is the imagery, the pervasive imagery of the Christianity, the popular. Even if you are not nine. So the challenge is now to bring Vatican Council to our neighbors. Of course, it's already not done among Christians. No? There's another deficit, but much more to make them understand the church has changed. I don't go into all that. How much time? I think it's time. I've stopped. Maybe a theological something. I can speak about 5 minutes. 5 more minutes.
Sure.
Yeah. Since Professor Philip asked me theological method, whether I could speak something on the Asian theological method is complex, but I will reduce it into 3 main things. But to have an understanding of how it works. 1, the theology presupposes a sense of mystery. So it's not the refinement of reason. We know what happened in the Second World War. Reason had gone for sleep, slumber. Enlightenment reason, where was it? It's a total failure of the reason, claims and reason. So to make theology completely dependent on reason is taking a gross risk for humanity. Therefore, that's also important, no time to explain how human rights requires more than rational foundation today. Motivational. Okay, that's another discourse. So the sense of mystery, open-ended. Truth is a pathless land. Pope Francis spoke in Singapore. It became a scandal for many. That religions are paths to God. In India, Hinduism has been saying 2000 years the same. This is our relativism and the heresy. Pope is saying. Of course, many Catholics took ill that the Pope said that. All religions lead to God, paths to God, quest for God. Therefore, theology must start from the quest. We don't want from a tomb where the deposit of truth in the tomb, well preserved tomb from where we take the deposit and then distribute. Very poor way of transmitting faith. The quest, increase the quest for truth, for God, and therefore necessarily a component is apophatic theology. Neti, neti, not this, not this. That kind of approach. Therefore, divine mystery as inexhaustible, which challenges a metaphysically based theology, which is all the discussion. Anyway, I don't enter into. Second, the principle of contradiction. The logic, the Western logic is either the A or B. There's an excluded middle, it's not. But you can be neither A nor B. For example, the basic Hindu approach to God is Advaita, non-duality. God is neither one nor two. God and human beings and the world is neither one nor two. So Advaita, Dvaita means two. Therefore, there is a room for an excluded middle. So it need not be, if A is true, B must be wrong, need not be. That you are able to negotiate and live with different aspects, thinking that is possible. I do not know, maybe. So that brings me to the third principle, which has been developed in Jaina tradition in India. Jaina tradition is more or less contemporary with Buddhism, Jainism. Beautiful principle. And Jainism is known for non-violence, moral violence also, not physical non-violence. There are Jaina monks who wear this, this one, so that they don't harm any Christian, even by their breath. I mean, it's an exaggeration, but to that extent, non-violence, which Gandhi embraced. Gandhi came from a place from where Jainism was very active. And this Jainism had an answer to moral violence, where we impose, the imposition. Spoke of, how do you call, Siyadavada. Siyadavada means maybe, may not be. So almost I caricature a little bit. Every statement must be preceded by maybe, may not be. This is not relativism. Because you don't have full control of truth. Therefore, these three principles, according to me, have shortened it, animate the theological methodology in Asia. Thank you. I will stop here and then we'll go for questions.
I just say a word. We are in the Synod.
Yes.
We've been impressed how much the central question of the Synod, which is mission, really comes from Vatican II. And that was striking for me. I wrote my doctoral thesis on Gaudium et Spes, but frankly, I had never thought of Gaudium et Spes as the primary mission document of the Second Vatican Council. And I think sometimes we professors, we say our students, they don't know Vatican II. Very often in the council we say that. And I understood better that probably our students who come from different countries, they know Vatican II from its effects. in the church and in the relationship between Christians and people from different religions, the neighbors, the poor. The poor is also a very strong question for.
It's better like this. Oh, yes, thank you. It's a question also, we don't discuss it much because it is a special study group, but it's at the center. The other thing is that, and I finish like this, your vision of mission in Asia. Silent witness. I remember meeting here in Rome Cardinal Marengo. We have a Professor Marengo, but there is a Cardinal Marengo from Mongolia. And he said, quoting an Indian bishop, he said, in Asia, how does mission go? Is whispering to the heart of the other. It's not totally silent, but it's whispering. So maybe we can have 2 minutes to discuss with the neighbor and say, like we did the sympathy, in what Professor Wilfred said, what touched me. So 2 minutes, and then I hope it will generate good questions. Okay, 2 minutes, is that all right?
What touched you? I said, what touched you? Sì, ho capito. Sì, in italiano.
L'idea della, cioè che per noi occidentali il concilio è un documento su cui fare esegesi, mentre invece per l'Asia è un punto di partenza da riprendere, si può muovere attivamente. E questo
No presenza,
sì,
presente.
non è così scontato.
Può parlare di
La mia domanda era cosa può imparare il povero teologo per registrare però
c'è sempre con quelli che si
importante, siamo più portati a fare, cioè provare a ricostruire il pensiero dell'autore. E non invece cosa genera la perché è molto più difficile. It's harder to have a control with the
Right, yeah, correct.
Who wants to be first to enter to start dialogue with Professor Wilfred? Who wants to be first? Please raise your hand. Yeah, please.
Posso parlare in italiano?
Sì, va bene.
no, anche l'italiano va bene, sì.
Ma grazie per ciò che ha detto, che apre la mia mente europeana ad altre visioni, altri modi anche di leggere il concilio. Ho fatto la mia tesi sul Vaticano, sul Concilio Vaticano II, quindi era molto interessante. Io ho una domanda che non riguarda proprio ciò che direttamente ha detto, però mi piacerebbe, è una domanda che è stata anche accennata in un qualche modo al sinodo durante la vigilia di preghiera, nelle domande cioè, di perdono, la questione degli abusi nella Chiesa. E sarei molto interessata di vedere come in India e come in Asia si legge o si parla o si riflette su questo problema che è un problema molto doloroso. I don't know if I must traduce, but my
No,
English
no,
is
no.
very
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
Professor understands very well. Do you want
fine.
to take other questions or
Maybe better immediately,
Immediately.
Okay, so
please.
more effective.
Over there?
I think it's a very important question. I'm not saying that this is a problem only in Europe. It's everywhere. Probably in Europe and America it's more publicized. But you have in Asia, Africa, everywhere it is, the problem is there, clerical abuse, which requires a radical reform within the church, also a new theology of the ordained ministry. Because if the ordained minister is made vicarius Christi, the ordination puts a seal, and indelible seal, all those kind of things. This is a time to revise that kind of theology of the ordained ministry. And I think Synod also will contribute to that. There is a big deficit, because we have been operating. Because that medieval times there was a law which said that no cleric, no abbot, no bishop could be taken to the civil court, excommunicated. Just imagine, in the Christendom it was possible. Therefore, we have been running through this team of Christendom where everybody is Christian, and therefore the priest or the cleric this becomes a dominant figure. But in recent times, many cases have come out. It must be looked at from different perspectives. The penitential rite the other day, Vatican, the cathedral, Basilica, there was the penitential service, which brought out this point very clearly. And Pope also, wherever he goes, listens to the victims. But there's another side of benefiting from this, the media and other, benefiting from this. There is a whole business, going on, and not ignoring or undermining this fact. That also has to be taken into account. Third point, which I want to say, which always is a personal reflection. That in many of the especially Central European countries, people leave the church. Some leave because of the church tax, etc., etc. And more recently, one of the reasons that used why people leave the church is because of the clerical abuse. My question is this: is your faith only so much deep? Because a cleric is a wrongdoer, mischief, is what do you call moral, immoral. I don't believe that. There are deeper reasons. John Baptist Metz, of course, whom I knew very well, he said about analyzing the European situation, said crisis of God. It is basically crisis of God. So a life where you live as if there is no God. I happen to be a member of the International Theology Commission and had the privilege of being part of it. Balthasar was a member. So we had 1 year the theme of eschatology, and that time the theme came about reincarnation. I remember Balthasar said in Switzerland, about 50% of the people believe in reincarnation. But then I had to intervene and make a distinction. Ratzinger was the chairman, he was there. That there is a difference between belief in reincarnation in India and Asia and in the West. In India and Asia, people pray so that they may not be reborn, so that they may soon reach the other world, because rebirth is a cycle of rebirth. Here one prays to be reborn because one life is too short to enjoy all the goodies of life. There's too many good things to enjoy. Completely different. I'm making a little trivializing. Therefore, if my faith is dependent only on the holiness of the priest, I think it's quite questionable. This is only a camouflage for a deeper malaise, which John Baptist met, is an European. Okay? God has created the crisis of God, easily, I would say. This is what I would say. So I think the problem has to be seen from many aspects.
Professor Wilfred mentioned his being part of the International Theological Commission that was 1986 to 1992. So he mentioned Balthazar. There was also Caffarà, the founder of the John II Institute.
Yes. Oh, you are the founder.
Yes. I want to ask you what he said. Do you have other questions? Please.
Mike is here.
Se ci può dire qualche cosa in più sulla ricerca teologica in Asia, in modo particolare, come dicevamo prima nello scambio, un teologo europeo si è formato anche con un certo tipo di mentalità, no? Nell'analizzare i problemi con delle basi filosofiche. Come può farsi mettere in questione dalla ricerca teologica indiana? Cosa possiamo imparare o cosa dovremmo? We must learn from Asian theological perspective. We are formed in Western theology.
One thing is not rely too much on human reason, and this capacity to. This is only one way. The senses are important. The senses, or the five senses. So you can see that the postmodern world, how much the corporeality is very important, the bodiliness. I remember African theologian Ebusi Bulaga, who said, in contrast to I think, therefore I am, said, I dance, therefore I am. So an African dances is where he realizes he or she is there. I dance, therefore I am. Very different from a mental operation. From the body is integral part of the self. Therefore, a theology which does not reflect the emotions, the senses, is becoming quite irrelevant, can become easily irrelevant. It's a play of a game, in a modern computer game. Theology can become an intellectual game, for you dispute this and that, etc., etc. Does not excite anybody. It doesn't bring any effect, In India, we had tarka. Tarka means argumentation. There's one way of finding truth, argument. But the sole reliance on argument does not help theology. Theology has to be more integral and make use of the senses. Because the five senses are the five doors through which the knowledge nihil intellectu nisi prius in sense. Always remember St. Thomas Aquinas said, nothing in your intellect which was not before in your senses. That's precisely what distinguishes Thomism from idealism and a priori way of thinking. How dangerous is a priori? We suffered in Asia because the a priori thinking, I do not want to name here, says that they will know everything. They know what is Buddhism, what is Hinduism, without studying anything. The typical Hegelian, we have all umphas and everything comprising a system. This does not work. It's counterproductive. It's a violation. It can be a source of authoritarian violence, imposition. Therefore, that's I would say. They need to become more integral.
Yes, please. Come, can you come, Vincent? Vincent is a doctoral student
Okay, good.
from India.
No, not too close. A little, yeah, sorry.
I'd like to thank you and appreciate the way that you explained the importance of ACL theology. Really, it was eye-opening for me. Being from South India, I really understand. One of the challenges that you said is the complex reality that we have in the state between us, we are minority. As we are Christian in India, especially, we are a minority. At present, the state is very, for us, a more fundamental way of treating the people. As our mission is, as you said, we need to witness silently. So, for our culture, how we can witness silently in India specifically in our own difficult situation, how we can witness. Can you just explain?
Of course, I can give you, these are things to be worked out, in practice in daily life. So therefore, there cannot be any ready-made programs, For example, to give an example, we have in India in parishes, following the Hindu tradition, flag hoisting. I don't know here in Europe, I don't know. We have it here. That 9-day celebration, patrocinio, patron's feast. So it starts on a Friday. The flag is hoisted in front of every church. There will be a masked nation of flag. Yes. It's raised, and so I know some of my students and others. They invite Muslims, they invite Hindus. They gladly come with offerings, and that flag is hoisted. And then they participate in everything, and they have no difficulty in participating in our worship. It's very interesting. So much so, in almost every Indian church, before the communion, the priest will abhor it sometimes. Only Catholics can go and see communion. I mean, they are not put off, they understand, but they have no difficulty because the sacred is everywhere. Whatever is sacred. I remember Mother Teresa came to our university. She did not know where she was, because she is brought everywhere. So on the way to the airport, she was asking, where was I? So I could see the Hindus touching her feet, and that means a sacredness, respect for the sacredness. That is why. So they respect it terribly, they don't say normal Hindus, except what we call the radical fundamentalists. They respect that, but they are not disappointed, but they are amazed that we do not respect that, their worship, their way of, that is one kind of problem. So there are many ways, quite innovative ways in which we can cooperate. For example, in common civil issues by Muslims, Hindus, everybody. That's a common problem. So they are joined together. A number of very, very positive cases of cooperation, among them. That builds friendship and even marriages. Some marriage, the father is a Hindu, mother is a Muslim, and the children, one is a Protestant. No problem. It does not become an issue of conflict in the family. Everybody understands. As you have a choice. Therefore, religion is not above, part of the quest for the divine. So that's what, therefore, there is a possibility of. given this environment, possibility of operation.
On marriage, while
Yes.
Julian, you want to ask a question? Yes. While he's coming, I just want to. Today we have been discussing the role of and the importance of accountability, of transparency in the church. I'm in English-speaking groups, so there are bishops from Africa, there are bishops from India or Asian. We don't have Indians from Asia. We have some from Australia, United States. It's true that this very concrete issue, depending on the relationship between church and state, can be seen very differently. Although people understand the value, the very fact of giving accounts and making them public can be difficult in some countries. And so it's very important to share also on these questions of interfaith marriages. Many bishops from Asia, they mentioned this during the present synod. Please. Julian is also a doctoral student.
Thank you very much for coming to be with us. It's really wonderful to hear from you, especially because so many of our students come from Asia.
He's from Canada.
I'm from Canada, yes. You mentioned a few times this risk of Eurocentrism, even including Rodder and different interpretations of implementing the council and so on. And I wonder how you would articulate the relationship between the Western intellectual tradition of Christian theology, even theology as a concept or religion as a concept, which is very much, these are Western categories, and how you would relate that to more Indian, Asian, indigenous, local theologies. What a possible interplay between the two, because there are certain aspects of Christianity historically that are very Western, even the fact that the New Testament is written in Greek and so on. So how do you create sort of an interculturality between these different paradigms of Christian theology in different parts of the world?
Thank you. You pointed out of different conceptions of religion. I think that's very important. That concept of religion is so defined in so many different ways. So it's very difficult. But I can point out one thing which I experientially see and feel, is this. The religion is not for most Asians a set of doctrines, not 10 commandments, a set of injunctions of practical morality, For most Asians, that includes also Confucianism and Taoism in China, which I have seen. Religion is practice. Practice means rituals, primarily ritual. There was a question in the Kerala High Court, one of the states, who is a Hindu? Because Hindu is a so diffuse a word. Because an atheist also can be Hindu. Because there is, a whole school of atheism, which is also part of Hinduism. Now, of course, from there only comes Buddhism. No God, no soul. So the priestly class has no work. That's why Buddha made the priestly class jobless. Because only if God and soul is there, you are worried about it. So the High Court judgment was, a Hindu is someone who is not a Christian, a Muslim, a Jain, a Sikh, or a Parsi. That's all. It means to say that it encompasses various things. So there's no doctrinal unity or moral, the commonality. What unites them are the rituals. Our liturgical calendar all will fail. The precision with which the Hindus do the particular ritual on that particular day the year. I used to be amazed. Some of them on the sea, or you can see, because they come and perform that ritual. So primarily ritual, because the ritual is a way to the Agni. That means this is in Vedic tradition, no? Agni, because the fire is seen as a priest, because it mediates between heaven and earth. It goes up. So Agni is the primordial priest because it mediates between heaven and earth. I told you a simple example. So the ritual enactment of the divine experience that unites. So therefore, the how do you call the hub or the crux of understanding whether this is also true of Taoism, in China, of the rituals. In this sense, rituals not as a formalism, but a touch with the divine. And this divine is open. So I think this diversity in the understanding of religion is very important. And therefore, theology, of course, there is a very sophisticated philosophical and theological treatises, whether Buddhism, Jainism, and Hinduism, starting from Advaitic philosophy, Dvaita, three, the relation, there's all speculations were there. But daily life of religion is lived through ritualism.
Yes, please. Sister Jean, she's a doctoral student from the Philippines.
Oh, good. So many doctors.
Good evening, professors and everybody. Thank you for your wonderful talk tonight. So I have written my question, not to forget it.
Yes.
If Second Vatican Council truly bear seeds and bear fruits, how come after this event there were a drop of vocations to religious life? Many left and the crisis in vocation. And the Second Vatican Council, if really Second Vatican Council rooted the life of the Church, in what way can you suggest to rise up the vocation in this religious life and in serving the kingdom of God, and how it applies into ancient theology today?
I think we need to distinguish between the condition in the West and in Asia regarding vocations. I've been reflecting on this, why there was not many vocations, because the problem everywhere, to that. So the priesthood of religious life, I was thinking why this is happening. In my analysis, there are 2 or 3 reasons. One is that, of course, the modern reasons are there is sexual, clerical sexual abuse, tax, church tax, all those reasons are there. Beyond that, if you go, one reason is that many of the things which the church has been doing, the charitable works, because the medieval, the hospitals, everything was started by the church. Orphanage, care for the old, all those what we call corporal works, charitable works, has been taken over modern social welfare states. So now the state is responsible for education, for health, for taking care of the orphans, etc. Therefore, a whole chunk of church sphere of activity has been taken. When you can serve the poor, by taking care of the sick and giving education, it's challenging. And the young people want to join, because it's quite challenging. This challenge is not there. The welfare state has taken all this into its hands. So, why are you recruiting? I asked the Indian major superiors, I addressed them, the major superiors. They are talking about the formation. Please stop about formation. First, tell me, what is the purpose of recruiting vocation? Now, as I told them, as it is, because the church has many establishments. It runs schools and colleges in India and other parts of Asia. You need to man those. to use a traditional word. Those institutions, therefore, you need human resources. So most of the resources in Asia of religious and priests are taken over through establishments and institutions, which is not the case in Europe. Number three, the whole idea of mission was very attractive. Think of the Irish missionary, and everywhere. So, because there was whole theology of mission which said that, as St. Francis imagined, he saw in a dream how the souls were falling into the hell like autumn leaves. So he was a man in a hurry. He rushed from India. He wanted to go to China. As many as possible he wants to save, because they are all going to hell. So the whole attraction of a mission theology, which was based on, I remember 1975, Urbaniana University, there was a conference. Rahner was there, and there was a French missionary. Rahner spoke about anonymous Christians. After the talk, the French missionary took up a quarrel with him. I've been 40 years giving whole my life. You are telling anonymous Christians they are all saved. So these are, according to me, some of the major reasons, why there is advocation. Now, as of now, there are occasions in most Asian countries, Indonesia, same, India, Sri Lanka, everywhere, because there are institutions. They're run. Secondly, from a social, we don't judge the intentions of people, because a young man or a woman goes because sincerely believes that's not. From a sociological perspective, there was a time when the best boys and girls went to the religious life and priestly life. That was the best occupation, sociologically speaking. But now so diversified, they want to be computer engineer. Their dreams are they want to be pilot. Understand? Therefore, the job opportunities, sociologically speaking, are open. Therefore, the crisis is going to come to India, Asia. But I have told our bishop that we must already think of it. It's coming. So, we don't know. These are some comments I'm making. I have no solution to that. But we must know why we are recruiting. I can understand that you have a Carmel monastery where, silently they pray and ask. For some, it's very attractive. Actually, they say for contemplative life, there are more occasions. That's what I read. So, these are some comments.
One last question. Yes, please.
Sì, present yourself.
Parlerò in italiano.
Sì.
Sono Claudia Leal, professoressa al Giovanni Paolo II, sono cilena e 17 anni fa, quando ero giovane, sono entrata nel suo ufficio a Madras.
Mamma mia.
Allora è un bellissimo.
È ancora vivo. Bene.
Tre domande, due domande. La prima è molto pratica, no? Io vorrei chiedere a lei qualche consiglio per professori, docenti europei oppure latinoamericani che trovano davanti a sé un gruppo di studenti prevalentemente asiatico. Cosa non dovrebbe dimenticare un professore che fa questo lavoro?
Benissimo. Una buona domanda. Sì.
C'è un'altra domanda.
Sì.
E la seconda, ecco,
Per fare uno studente.
se lei riesce a vedere legami di, non so come dire, come nutrizione feconda tra il Concilio Vaticano II e l'esperienza sinodale. Alcuni autori hanno detto guarda che il sinodo è un nuovo concilio, non hanno voluto chiamarlo concilio. E così come usciremo da questa esperienza e come uscirà, cioè come guarderemo noi il Vaticano II dopo questo sinodo?
Bene.
Grazie.
What you said about the students, what a professor here should not do. I have no prescription, but from my experience, one or two things I can tell you that I have found that many students coming from Asia, when they do some research, the guide almost forces them to connect it with Europe. For example, you write about something, you have to connect it with Shilibank. There's no connection. See, they have to apply the theory of Shilibank to this, no? Then because they're insecure, they don't know about that. Therefore, they want to assure 50%, if you write about Shilibank and this and that, connect this and that. No, I think this approach is passé, is gone, this. So we need to be freshly look at it. If not, the competent director should get the help of others and get informed himself or herself, rather than force a student. I know one Chinese and Malaysian student was forced to write the Shilibak and interreligious dialogue in Asia. I don't know what is the connection. So you see that many theses are written in this way, which should be avoided. Should be on, and if the professor doesn't know, she should have a co-moderator from that particular country, so she or she can verify, be in dialogue. That will be more encouraging. And your second question about Vatican II and Synod, my honest opinion is this. I repeatedly said this. Vatican II was Vatican II because there were confrontation of views. It didn't start that way. You had Ottaviani, the defender of orthodoxy. His episcopal motto was Semper Idem, always the same. The change is imperfection. This was a classical word. So that bishops challenged each other. They said, no, this is what I think. And there was a voting. Sagrasanga Concilium, how we could see that, this whole thing. So they were not afraid of confronting their brother bishops. But in my experience working with the bishops' conferences is this, that most bishops don't want to do that. They're like, what do you call, respect. I don't know, this false kind of respect for. So they don't tell their brother bishop, no, sorry, bishop, I think differently. Then there's some creativity. Therefore, Vatican II became what it was because of this confrontation. There was a clear position, and they dialogued, and they came to some kind of understanding. And this, I do not know, Philip and tell to what extent that happens in the Synod. So I think it may not be a good comparison of Vatican II and the Synod becoming a council. That's not the case, at least, to my knowledge, it is not. Rather, that Pope Francis is trying a different interpretation of Vatican II, which is close to Asian interpretation, which I said. It's not the textuality of the text. Therefore, he is bringing back the forgotten people of God, which constituted the Copernican Revolution, Vatican II, the change of the chapter 3, to 2, back again to people of God, which under two pontificates were seen afraid because the people means power, but dangerous. Therefore, the concept of communion was very too vague and general. Now, Pope Francis is bringing back the people, the Synod, the people. So that's a novelty in that sense, that Vatican, a new reception. Pope Francis is giving a new reception to Vatican II. That's a novelty. And Synod is a remarkable moment of new reception of Vatican II, where the whole thing about a synod of bishops. I remember, sorry to quote my own experiences, but I can't. But in 1986, there was the Asian Bishops' Conference in Tokyo, where I was there. After I spoke, there was this from the Vatican Secretariat of the Synod, Cardinal Schott, is a Dutchman. So these Asian bishops came together in view of a synod on laity. So when I spoke, I raised the question, since it is not, it's a laity, it's the object of synod, why don't we have laity in the synod? Then the cardinal rose and objected to say that it is synod of bishops. He underlined twice, synod of bishops. So now, from being a synod of bishops, the transition to synod of the church. Therefore, significant, there are voting members who are not ordained ministers in the synod. Therefore, this is a new reception of Vatican.
Yesterday, there was a forum on the bishop in a synodal church.
Right.
You attended it.
Yes, I know.
We had a brilliant conference by the new Cardinal of Torino, Roberto Repoli, showed the ambiguities of Vatican II. It was very interesting. But, so there was Theology and Canon Law of Europe, Britain, of Latin America, African theology none,
Asian,
Asian theology none. What is your dream? We are halfway of the synod. What is your dream about participation, contribution of Asian theology to the present synod?
Very good question, Philip. This is something I think very important. We are at a turning point. We need to change the methodology. Let me explain what I mean to say is that for a long time, of course, since Vatican II, anybody behind that Africa and Asia, especially, have to provide contextual cases to what the European American theologians frame the problem. They frame the problem. And you have to give in Africa like this answer. Asia, they're very happy. Where instances of verification of a theory or framework are created. You cannot speak about the frame. You can only bring cases. And that continues even today. Yesterday I was surprised there was no African Asian. Why can't an African or Asian speak about the theology of episcopate? Africans can only speak about polygamy in the moral theology. No? So this methodology must change. Therefore, we must frame the question together. Now, don't frame the question first and then ask contribution from this is condescending, which is no more acceptable, but it continues.
Okay, Professor, thank you so much for starting this process of framing questions together tonight, at least at the John Paul II Institute and in connection with the Irish College. Thank you so much again, Father Finoti, all, and we lay the full hour.
Thank you very much. Thank you.